car really pulls. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Carbon Connection. You are joining me at BMW Midrand, and once again we have the opportunity to test one of the best BMW stable. Of course, a special thanks to BMW Midrand for affording us the opportunity. Today we have the G87 M2 behind me, and I'm super stoked to drive this car and obviously give you guys some insight on the driving experience, how it feels, how it drives out there. And yeah, let's go out and have some fun. But before we do that, let's take a look at the M2 itself. This one is spec'd in Alpine White. Let's talk some specs, and then yeah, we'll head out on the road. Thanks for tuning into another video. Of course, we have to start off talking about the styling. Quite controversial out there. Although in Alpine White, I must say, it sort of looks good. What everyone's obviously talking about majority of the time is the very boxy look in front, as opposed to the angular lines and stuff that you'd see on the M240 or another 2 Series with the M Sportback. The M2 has very straight lines, looks very meaty, very beefy, but definitely isn't to everyone's liking. The headlights are also specific to the M2, and they are not shared with the rest of the 2 Series range. Of course, you've got the M specific bonnet with the bump, although that is shared with the M240. This has considerably smaller grills compared to the G Series M3 and M4. I quite like these grills though, as opposed to the larger ones that extend all the way down into the front bumper. The headlamp design, this is pretty neat. This is pretty neat. In terms of the wheels, they are the same, if not very similar, to the G82 M3 and M4s. And of course, we have M-specific mirrors, as you would in the rest of the M cars. Although this is filtering down into the M performance models like the M240. Something that I noticed when I was actually taking footage for reels and stuff of this car is a very peculiar side skirt that extends pretty high up into the fender. It's not something I've seen or noticed before on other cars. From the side profile, it does make it look pretty mean. That's the auto lock function. So the key's in my pocket. The minute I walk away, the car locks itself. Moving on to the rear, of course, it has those massive wheel arches that everybody loves about M cars. And obviously, it's really pronounced in the smaller model, like the M2. Carrying on with the rear, I believe the tail lights are shared with the normal 2 Series. Very nice design. Although I have seen on Instagram, I think it was Ardro Design, where he literally pasted different types or different colors of tape and extended or rather gave it an extended look to the taillights. And that looks really nice. I'm not too sure if BMW would maybe consider something like that in the LCI, but these are not too bad. The rear bumper also has these gloss black inserts and reflectors, as well as the PDC dot built into there. And they seem to be coming out with, well, like in the M3 and M4, a gloss black diffuser. I feel that BMW is taking a little bit away from the aftermarket scene, considering that they are giving their cars slightly larger side skirts, diffusers, spoilers as standard. But obviously, with the aftermarket guys, there is still a lot to choose from. But yeah, it's nice to see them making it look even more sporty than they previously have. In true M fashion, the M2 also has a carbon fiber roof. Moving on to the interior, well, actually, before we get to the interior, this is something that I really love. It is a new design from BMW. Obviously, previously having the normal handles that stick out, they have incorporated into the body. You can also lock the car by sliding your finger over here and then obviously putting your hand under the handle to unlock the car, provided that it does have that function or option chosen. Just going to switch off these park lights. That's sorted. The interior is probably one of the highlights of the G Series. Of course, like I've mentioned in my previous reviews of the M5 as well as the M4. The digital display in the M2 is that of the widescreen nature and not the separate cockpit and screen over there. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this. I honestly prefer them being separated. It sort of gives me a more analog feel. But of course, this, in line with what other manufacturers are making, it does make sense. BMW really has paid attention to little quirky designs such as the M colors in the door guards. I know this is specific to the 2 Series. This is also found in the M240i. I think it's some lovely, lovely detail. It does make the cabin feel a lot more special. You've even got some indents in the door guards over here. I think that looks fantastic. Seems like premium quality. It does feel really, really good. And then, of course, the M Performance seats. These are the same seats that you'd find in the M3, M4, or the 2 Series and 3 Series spec'd with the M Performance seats. Although in the M2, it does come with the two-tone color, or rather the M colors on the seats, and I think that looks fantastic. I have already driven this car briefly, and the seats definitely are very, very supportive, very, 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 very comfy. And of course, they look fantastic, like I've already mentioned. I'm not going to go into too much detail because this is very similar in terms of functionality and the look, etc., of the M4 that I test drove. So you've got the M1 and M2 buttons that obviously are customizable. You've got some really, really nice carbon fiber finishes that follow through over here into the interior and the gear surround. Very, very nice looking gear lever with the M leather embossed finish over there, of course, with the M colors. In terms of space, the 2 Series obviously has grown a lot. I mean, we were just comparing how big BMW's compact coupe is next to this beautiful, beautiful classic Z3, and the size difference is mega. The M2 really does tower over it, even though it's supposed to be BMW's compact coupe. So it just shows, obviously, how cars are growing from generation to generation. Okay, so before we head out for our test drive, and obviously I'll give you my driving impressions and go through some specs regarding this specific M2, and let us do our mandatory sound check, and then we can head out. Okay, we are just about ready to take the M2 out on a quick test drive to give you guys, well, sort of an idea of what it's like to drive, what I like about it, what don't I like about it. But yeah, let's see what it's all about. The first thing that I obviously noticed is how much the 2 Series has grown in size. Getting in here, it doesn't feel a lot smaller than, for example, my F30 330D. But of course, that is with every generation of a car. For example, when I was driving here to BMW Midrand, I was behind an E36 316. And I was just looking at how much smaller that car is in comparison to the F30. So even though this is BMW's compact, or rather most compact coupe, it's definitely not the smallest of cars. So the BMW M2 is powered by BMW's S58 motor, which you've obviously already seen in the M4 that I test drove. And you would also find the exact same motor in the X3 M competition, X4 M competition, and of course the G80 M3. But here in the G87 M2, it is a little bit down on power. It produces 338 kilowatts and 550 Newton meters of torque. In terms of power though, even though it's down on the other cars, that's more power than you'd get in the previous generation M3 and M4 competition. So it's not like it's a slouch or anything like that. So for those of you that may not be familiar with the S58 motor, it is a 3-liter twin-turbo inline-6 BMW motor. And yeah, 338 kilowatts is definitely more than enough in a car of this size. So in terms of drivability and how it feels on the road, it's definitely a huge difference to my previously owned F80 M3. One of the differences being that this is paired to an 8-speed ZF instead of the 7-speed DCT that the F-Series had. Now, while the ZF 8-speed is definitely more than capable, it delivers very, very, very quick shifts. It's easy to use. It's very intuitive. I feel that I do miss the clunkiness of the DCT gearbox. It does add a little bit to the experience, or the driving experience. And the shifts were a little bit more harsh on the DCT. Although this does have different driving modes, so you can obviously up the shift velocity like you can in most other M cars with 8-speed ZF. This car is brilliantly quick. It's definitely a lot more exciting than the M4, in my opinion. I think that's because it's just a little bit more compact. It sort of speaks to the DNA of BMW that I know of, obviously coming from the 2000s when I was drooling over E46 M3s. Driving this sort of takes me back in terms of size, even though this is a little bit bigger. But after driving an M4, which felt massive compared to this, I think this is just a little bit more playful, a little bit more fun, a little less serious in terms of drivability and experience. The blips are amazing. Tunnel check. The S58 sounds magnificent, and of course this car does not have any optional M Performance exhaust or anything like that. In the cabin there's more than enough sound. There isn't obviously too much dampening. I do understand that, like in any other modern M car, there is some sort of engine noise being played through the speakers to enhance the experience. But in this case, it's sort of welcome, to be honest with you. So I'm going to flip the gearbox into its most aggressive setting and see if that makes a huge difference. Thus far, it's been really, really smooth and easy to live with in automatic mode. I'm going to drive it around in manual mode and see if the most aggressive settings are at all uncomfortable or if the changes are a little bit too harsh. So in the aggressive mode, which I'm in currently and shifting myself, I can already tell you that it doesn't shove you into your seat the way the DCT used to, but it is a very, very quick and efficient shift. I really do like the sounds that the car makes. On upshifts, it does give a slight blip at the change of gear, both up and down, which is a nice sound. In terms of steering, this car is really, really precise, and the brakes are super sharp as well. I see we've got some traffic and people brake testing us, but the M2 is just very, very reassuring in the way it handles its size, its weight, pretty much everything about it. And even though this is not offered in an X-Drive version, I'm not too sure if BMW does plan on offering it in X-Drive in future, but this is a full-on rear-wheel drive car. And in previous M cars, obviously rear-wheel drives especially, you'd feel the tail obviously losing its grip pretty easily. Although this feels planted, even launching it feels really, really planted. I obviously wouldn't compare it to a four-wheel drive car at all, but it just doesn't feel as slippery as previous M cars. And I feel that getting it off the line is a lot easier than you'd expect for a rear-wheel drive car. Oh, I see actually a really nice Sao Paulo yellow M4 Cabriolet. That's a really, really nice car. In terms of features, this car is loaded with tech. I mean, your M driving modes are super, super customizable. There's obviously different traction modes. There's different ferocity of changing gears. So yeah, there's a lot of settings that you can obviously customize to your M1 and M2 buttons, depending whether you're taking the car on a track or if you just want a little bit more spirited driving around town, etc. Obviously, sticking to the speed limits and rules of the road. Now, I know I'm comparing this to my F80 M3 quite often, but in terms of comfort and ride quality, I really feel that this feels way more advanced. This is a lot more comfortable on the road. The seats are way more supportive. I remember doing a trip to Durban in my F80 M3, and at the end of the trip, my lower back was in shambles. However, I can already tell you that the seats in this M2 are way ahead in terms of comfort. They also look really fantastic, especially with the M color accents that they have on it. I also feel that it soaks up the bumps with ease. It doesn't feel as hard as previous M cars without taking away from that stiff feeling that gives you the confidence to throw it around a bend or obviously do some spirited driving. Wow, this car really pulls. And the brakes feel absolutely fantastic. BMW claims a 0 to 100 of 4.1 seconds. And I think that's in line with the previous generation M3 and M4. However, I'm pretty convinced that this is quicker. I know I've previously tried using my Draggy, but for some odd reason, there's just never network in this area. And it struggles to pick up GPS signals, so I'm not going to even bother. But yeah, there's lots of other YouTube videos that you can watch, obviously, to check the 0 to 100 times and official times, etc. But yeah, it definitely feels a lot quicker than BMW claims it is. The car also has a specific exhaust button, so you can leave that on even if you're driving with everything else in sort of comfort mode, which is a nice to have because obviously you really do want that exhaust note playing in the background throughout your drive. I mean, it really adds to the experience, and that's why you're buying an M car. It just blows my mind at how quick this car is. And how effortlessly it does everything. I mean, you don't necessarily need to get it revved up to get everything out of it. I mean, you could really enjoy it by even short shifting at about 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. It'll still, blow your mind. Now, I do understand, obviously, a lot of other people will be like, yeah, but it's not the quickest car on a quarter mile. It's not the quickest car from 0 to 100. It's a rear-wheel drive, and everyone's going towards this hype and craze around quarter mile times and, you know, who's the quickest and this and that. And obviously I do understand there is a different appeal to that, and I'm not taking away from people who do enjoy that. I mean, I have taken my car previously to the drag strip to see what sort of quarter mile time I could achieve, and that was really fun. However, I feel that when you buy an M2, it's more just for the experience that you get to experience every single day. Where it's rewarding in different ways rather than quarter mile times or your 0 to 100 times. It's about the road holding. It's about throwing it around a bend and having that confidence and knowing that you're driving a car that's more than capable of going around Kyalami blisteringly quick. Of course, I'm using Kyalami as an example because we're here in South Africa. But it's just got that urgency, that special M car feeling, which other manufacturers just don't get right. I do understand that there are other cars out there that are quicker, obviously. But just cruising around, actually moving around this car in the parking lot, very bumpy road, but I could already feel, or rather get that sense of urgency. You know, it just wants to go. It's sort of saying, just let me out there, just open me up. And the minute you're out there on an open road, that's exactly what you can do. That's exactly what you enjoy doing. And it's a feeling that I can't really explain or put into words. So the best bet for you would be to actually head on to BMW Midrand. And yeah, if you're in the financial position, buy this M2. It's actually for sale at 1.5 million rand. This is approved used cars. And this one only has about 4,000 Ks. I think it's just done its run-in service. I'll actually leave a link to this car if you're interested in checking the specs, if you are keen on buying it, in the description below. And BMW has just upped their game in terms of technology, in terms of the interior, and I just feel that they're ahead of the game against most of the manufacturers that would obviously be direct competitors. I'm not going to mention any names, but wow, it's just fantastic. It's really, really, really a fantastic experience. Although I must admit that I do miss the slightly more raw feeling of the previous generation, the F-Series. The F-Series would scare me a little bit every now and then when I'd floor it. This still does definitely push you in the back of your seat, but it does feel a lot more controlled. It's sort of become more of a gentleman. That'll still knock you out though. But yeah, it's just become a bit more of a gentleman in terms of how it delivers its power, in terms of its size. Although, yeah, it doesn't take away from the driving experience, and it definitely doesn't make it anything less of an M car than it is. Another thing that I noticed, you barely hear the turbo whistle or anything of that sort, or it dumping if you let off the accelerator before it changes or anything like that. It just sounds, to me, it almost sounds like just a normal naturally aspirated BMW, although you do get those burbles now and then from the exhaust, which is nice, especially when the exhaust button is on. But yeah, nothing screams to you telling you that you're driving a turbocharged car. And I think BMW has gotten this right for quite some time now, where their turbocharged cars feel like naturally aspirated cars. They just feel super linear, the way they deliver their power. It's just a really, really special experience. If I really had to nitpick, something that really, really still bugs me in these newer generations is the climate control being put into the iDrive system. So you've got to manage everything via that screen, and that's just inconvenient. I mean, you want to be able to switch on your aircon by the touch of a button rather than looking for things in a menu on your screen, etc. So yeah, if I had to really, really nitpick, that's definitely one thing that gets to me on the newer versions of these BMWs. And of course, that follows suit with the M2 that we're in today. Now, I do understand that the styling is a controversial topic. Initially, I always tell everyone, hey, M2 is spectacular only if you buy it in black, because I just couldn't get used to the grille and, well, actually not really the grille. It's more the squared off face. The area end to me just didn't look like they finished it off properly, especially the boot. There was something about the boot that just didn't sit well with me. And as I've been seeing them more and more often, it sort of grows on me, but I definitely wouldn't say it's my favorite design from BMW. This specific car in Alpine White, from certain angles, when I was creating some social media content and some reels, certain angles it looked really, really good, especially sort of the front quarter, looking at it drive in at BMW Midrand. And I was like, hey, that's actually a pretty good looking car. And then when I look at it, from dead ahead, I'm like, no, again, it's too squared off. And then you look at it at a different angle and it looks sort of good. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's just a very, very controversial situation in terms of styling. It's definitely going to grow on us, like most of other BMW designs. I still think that the 3 Series, especially in the LCI, is still one of BMW's best designs. I mean, especially from the modern lineup, that looks spectacular no matter what color it is, no matter what spec. Shucks, I'd probably even take it in, even if it wasn't an M Sport. But yeah, actually, I'm just passing a 2 Series now with the M Sport kit, and I do prefer the sort of triangular finishes on the front bumper of those rather than the squared off ones in the M2. Although you don't get, of course, the wide wheel arches like you do in this. But of course, it is appealing to the younger generation. I'm saying younger as I'm that old, but I'm really not. But yeah, I think BMW knows their target market, and they're going at it. And obviously they're making a great success of this. They're not shying away from the true MDNA in terms of drivability, in terms of sound, in terms of power. So it's good to see that they've stuck to their guns in those terms. we're not driving an M car that has a 2-liter 4-cylinder hybrid motor or anything of that sort. It is the M car that we know, from previous generations. It is still full-on M. So if I had money lying around in the bank, would I buy this car? I most definitely would. Honestly, it's really, really tough to find anything that would give you the sort of experience in that price bracket with this size, especially in the rear-wheel drive world. Obviously, majority of the other cars are heading towards four-wheel drive. And this, it just feels iconic. And I understand that it has grown a lot in size if you compare it to its true predecessor, which would be the 1M. And obviously before BMW changed their numbering system, etc., etc. If you look at a 1M next to this, it definitely looks a lot smaller. Although even though this is a bigger car, it doesn't feel like a bigger car, which is important, and which obviously bears testament to BMW's brilliance in their engineering and obviously making a car feel the way you'd want it to feel. So yeah, the M2 experience is coming to an end for us. But I really think this is a beautiful car. Actually, I'd probably take it over the M4, the M3, simply because of the size and the feel that it gives me, even though they'd probably kill me in a drag race or whatever it is, because they have more power, because they have the optional X drive in certain cars if you choose that. But the M2 just speaks to true M DNA. The 3-liter, the rear-wheel drive, the compact car. So yeah, thanks for tuning into another video.